Make no mistake, there was a connection, right? They were close friends. And whether he did write him a birthday note or not, whether the videos we've seen are just the tip of the iceberg, whether the stories we've heard from some accounts from accusers are true or not, and I don't assume anything's necessarily true, they had a relationship. That's what, to me, again, continues to be one of the undercovered aspects of this story. They were close. How close? What did that entail? We don't know. But they were close. And that's a big part of what's driving it now for the press, certainly for the Democrats, and for some Republicans. So we had Tulsi Gabbard, head of national intelligence, whatever her own issues revolving this story of the Russia collusion matter, when she went to the White House podium on Wednesday to present the case, to me, she looked uncomfortable. I don't know her that well, but I've seen her in situations where she's comfortable and ones where she's uncomfortable. She looked uncomfortable. Now, many people I talked to, including some Republicans and nearly every Democrat, says that she was encouraged to put out this bombshell set of accusations to create at least a short-term distraction. It'd be one of many distractions, if that's the case, done to try to take the spotlight off of the Epstein matter. She'd say she was for long-term justice. And there are plenty of Republicans who are now heavily invested in this story. So while the media, which has largely ignored her accusations, have not been taken off the Epstein story by what she's done, it does rally the president's base. With justification, there's no stronger pull for MAGA to bond together than what was done to Donald Trump by the independent counsel investigation and by charges about Russia. But this isn't a defense of Donald Trump. This is going on offense, implicating the Clintons, the Obamas, the cast of characters like Mr. Brennan and Mr. Comey, who have long been villains in MAGA. I don't know what Tulsi Gabbard's motivation is. I don't know what role Donald Trump might have played in her bringing that up. But I do know that if the point of it was to take the media focus off of Epstein, to take the congressional focus off of Epstein, it's not going to do it. Now, there's also the Clinton connection, right? The Clintons have long been concerned about Epstein. And I can tell you, as a matter of fact, regardless of whether President Clinton's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein was different than has already been reported, but there are countless pictures of the two of them together. It's clear that Maxwell and Epstein knew the Clintons, associated with the Clintons. Just like with Donald Trump, though, I think people assume we know the contours of the relationship. We don't. We don't. But this notion that this is a Republican controversy is wrong. And many people who are Democrats besides Bill Clinton are no doubt going to be listed in the Jeffrey Epstein material. Much was made this week about the Wall Street Journal reporting that Donald Trump's named in the materials related to Jeffrey Epstein that the government has. So is Bill Clinton. Okay, so is Bill Clinton. Now, regarding Barack Obama, I don't know he's got any connection to Jeffrey Epstein. But there's no doubt that what's caused the Gabbard accusations to be so explosive is basically charging a former president of the United States with treason. Barack Obama rarely responds to anything Donald Trump says about him or much of anything else, but he did respond here, his office denying the accusations. Barack Obama, when he was president, was secretive, made top secret decisions, and there were some efforts at cover up, drone attacks, assassinations. But I have to tell you, no matter what negative things anyone thinks about Barack Obama, he, I believe, would not engage in overtly criminal behavior. It's not his style. It's not his reputation. It's not his jam. He is throughout his presidency was concerned about that. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he committed a crime in this case. I'm open to anything. But I'm just telling you, for all his flaws as a person and as a president, whatever negative things you think about him, he worked very hard to stay on the right side of the law as president of the United States. We'll see what that investigation comes up with. Now, as I said, the Clintons are part of this story now. So is Barack Obama. But front and center is the president. And Donald Trump is, based on his public reaction, not just in the last couple months, but historically, to Jeffrey Epstein, there's something going on there. I don't prejudge what it might be. But I look at what he said, how he said it. Okay, this is a guy with an infamously checkered and reckless history regarding women. Just in what's public, his publicly adulterous affair with his second wife, Marla Maples, his grab him by the pussy comments that came out during his first presidential campaign, the Stormy Daniels situation. There are endless examples of Donald Trump's rude, mean-spirited, and vulgar comments about women that he's feuding with. Could give you lots of examples of that. Megyn Kelly did a pretty good job of summing that up when she moderated the debate back in 2016. In all these cases, Donald Trump has faced down every criticism. Okay, everyone. He has survived these. These are not in how he has dealt with them. These are not shootings on Fifth Avenue. And in that way, he's like Bill Clinton. For all of the associations he's had with tawdry sexual matters, he survived them. They don't seem to have hurt him in a decisive way. But I can tell you this about Donald Trump without having discussed this matter with him. He is savvy enough, canny enough, and aware enough, and sensible enough to understand that a connection to Jeffrey Epstein, it's just different. As damaging as those other sexual matters might have been, Epstein is different. Most obviously because it involves, at least as far as Epstein was concerned, the abuse of young victims, but also the profiteering, that kind of strange eyes wide shut, elitist secrecy. All of that is a hard no for the American public. Okay? And participating in this kind of exploitation of girls and women, okay, that could be what might be the only effective stake to Donald Trump's unshakable power, the loyalty generated by his movement, and his capacity to walk through political and personal controversy that would end the political career of almost anybody else. Okay? This is not shooting someone on Fifth Avenue. This is not shameless dissembling or chaos creation. It's not classic tomcatting that other politicians also have survived. But partaking in Epstein's sick offerings of human beings as party favors or pastry assortments, that's different. And Donald Trump knows that. He might know that because he's concerned about what he'd be accused with. But he also knows it's different because he recognizes public attitudes, public mores. Okay? He's not keen on being associated with Jeffrey Epstein. And when you look at what his spokespeople say when they're forced to respond on Epstein, they always make a point of emphasizing that Donald Trump cut off the relationship. And there's no reason to doubt that. There's no reason to doubt it. But at the same time, there's also no reason to doubt that they had a years-long association, the contours of which we still don't know. The Wall Street Journal says Donald Trump wrote Jeffrey Epstein a letter for his birthday book. I don't know if it's true or not. The president denies it. I'll say again, I don't prejudge. The president might be telling the truth. He might not. But that letter, if it's accurate, if it's authentic, to me, it's not about whether Donald Trump wrote something bawdy or not. There's a guy who associated with porn stars, right? It's not about that. It's about a reminder that even now, we don't know the contours of their relationship. There's so many questions about it we don't know. The president doesn't want to talk about any of that. And I don't know if he does an interview and a reporter has the temerity, the nerve, the gumption to ask him for the details of his association with Epstein. I don't know what he'll say. I do know that the flurry of the assortment, odds and ends, cats and dogs of distractions the president has tried to put out over the last several days and weeks, it's not stuck, okay? It's not kept the Epstein story from growing. And I've been surprised. I did not think it would have this sustaining power. I've talked here about part of why it sustains is because it's a through line with all the things that the American people have decided favor elites over everybody else. And obviously there's an interest in it because it involves money and sexual behavior. But other things are not, it's clear now, going to replace this. Now, I have to say that with some trepidation, with some humility, because think of all the big stories this year during the Trump 2.0 that seemed like they would dominate our lives for a good long time. Tariffs, Ukraine, Gaza, the deportations in California. These things come and go. That's the nature of news. And sometimes it happens organically. The press gets bored. A bigger story replaces it. There's not much new to say. And sometimes Donald Trump uses his extraordinary capacity to change the news cycle, to change what people are talking about. I think Donald Trump, after a strenuous attempt over the last few days, including posting on Truth Social criticism of his own supporters, which he'd never done before, I think he probably knows now this is not going to go away. And we've got some things that are out there. His own advisors from the Justice Department meeting with Maxwell in prison this week. The attempts by the administration so far failed to get federal courts to release the grand jury material. And of course, the drumbeat in Congress, including by some Republicans, working with Ro Khanna to force more disclosure, okay? Now, look, there are millions of Americans who have never cared about the Epstein story and millions more who have moved on. For them, this story fades with time like so many stories does. So many stories do, but it also has an extraordinary hold on tens of millions of people. And some of those people are MAGA. Some of those people are not. Some of those people are interested in it because it's an interesting story. But a lot of them are interested because of justice for the victims. They're interested in it because they believe that this is a test of Donald Trump, a test of American government, a test of whether elites will be held accountable and the truth will be known. Okay? Something has shifted here. This story has assumed an importance, an energy, a momentum that I did not expect. And I can't tell you that it will continue, but it feels today like it will. It always bears repeating, always. The elastic persistence of this story is not due primarily to the prurient elements. The reason it persists is because of the fundamental ugliness and the societal imbalances at its core. So watch Maxwell, okay? She should be watching. She should have a set of eyes installed in the back of her head. But she's trying to figure out how to use whatever leverage, whatever resources she has to save her own skin, whether that's to stay alive or to get out of prison. Who knows? Who knows? We want to know what she has to offer. Some people associated with her are now saying she's got stuff to offer, that there's stuff she's never told federal authorities that would be of interest. Can you imagine if she's before Congress and Democrats and Republicans get to ask her about how she operated, both in general, but also with Donald Trump and Bill Clinton? You know, Donald Trump and Bill Clinton share other friends, other associates, but Maxwell is different. And this is a woman who people barely heard her voice. People don't know what she's going to say. And recall, amongst the many odd reactions Donald Trump has had whenever the Epstein story has come up over his whole 10 years in elective life, he was asked about her trial and he said he wished her well. Now, maybe that was innocent. They were friendly. Maybe he was just wishing a friend well, but he didn't denounce her. Okay, so let's watch. Let's see how the president posts on social media, as always, for clues to whether he thinks this is a potential big problem for her, a stake through his heart, how he's feeling about it. I don't think he wants to be asked about it, but he will be. He will be. It's not going away. The media doesn't want to go away, and they are focused on this now as a story about Trump. There are obviously truly important and impactful national implications of this. But the only way that the press is going to be able to cover this is to be strong, trustworthy, unbiased. Okay, this is a time for deep and fair reporting, even-handed, headlines, leads, sound bites. We need in the media to cover this complicated story, good judgment, a clean agenda. Okay, the twisted roots of this Epstein saga cannot be unearthed. They cannot be exposed without an aggressive and impartial set of news organizations. Donald Trump wants to change the topic. And we have to remember that there are other important stories. We have to think about the victims, about truth, about justice, about a story that we now know, unlike Jeffrey Epstein, will not die. Epstein may be dead and buried, but this will continue. And for Donald Trump, that presents, at a minimum, a frustration that his agenda, his successes that he's had are not being covered the way he would like them to be covered, okay? That's a big part of the story. But so is, without any doubt, the question of his relationship with Epstein. I am not a suspicious person. Unlike some Democrats, unlike some people in the media, I'm not assuming that Donald Trump put Tulsi Gabbard up to trying to create a change in the story. I'm not assuming the worst about Donald Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. But the building blocks for me remain. He shouldn't be making decisions in this case, because even though he broke off his relationship with Epstein, by his own account, and as best we can tell, they were close friends. The level of closeness is something still to be figured out. but they were close friends. He shouldn't be running this thing, but he's chosen to. And he's chosen to try to get the story to stop. Limited disclosure. The two things he's trying for, talking to Maxwell, asking the courts to put out the grand jury material. That's not nothing. That's on most everybody's list of people who want disclosure. But it falls far short of what the public is demanding, what members of Congress are demanding. It's possible that at the end of July, the month of August, with Congress away and the news cycle slowing down a bit, it's possible that we won't see a ton of revelations. But I don't believe now that when the Congress comes back in after Labor Day, I don't believe that they're going to drop this. I believe they're going to continue it. And what endures here is the desire to see the documents, but also what endures is this mystery. How is Donald Trump connected to this guy? And why does he react the way he does? If I could interview the president on this, I would ask him about the origins of the relationship. I would ask him what he liked about Jeffrey Epstein. Why did they like spending time together? And then clear the air about what he knew about Epstein's conduct. Don't assume the worst about the president, but let's get to the bottom of what he actually saw. So many of the elites, Donald Trump is an elite, so many of them who had a relationship with Epstein, whether it was close or not, whether they went to his parties, whether they were around him. So many of them claim they never saw anything amiss. Some of them even went so far to claim that after his conviction in Florida and after he was incarcerated briefly. He went to meetings, sometimes on serious topics. It wasn't just parties. He went to Harvard on a regular basis and met with senior officials there and distinguished academics. You didn't find one person so far who wasn't a victim of these famous people, including President Trump, who said, you know what, in retrospect, I saw something, or at the time I saw something and I kept quiet about it. Now, Epstein was a very smart guy, very devious guy, very conniving guy, and perhaps he hid everything so brilliantly that he was the ultimate in compartmentalization, maybe. But I think that part of what's driving this now, without a doubt, is that the media, the Democrats, and more than a few Republicans wonder what is up with Donald Trump. The irony is the president's desire to make this story go away has only fueled it. Because I'm not the only one who looks at the way he's handled himself, the way he's talked about this, not just now, as I've said, but over years, and wonders, what is that about? You don't have to have a PhD in Trump studies to say, string together his squirreliest answers, and you will see something weird.